Okay, please welcome Rakesh Sangani, partner of Proservartner, and John Hall of Triangular World.
Like a G6, like a G6, like a G6. Now I'm feeling so fly. Like a G6, like a G6, like a G6. Now I'm feeling so fly. Like a G6.
We were asked to actually put the interviewee in the white chair, and I said being on the dark side was always good for me. So
come into the light.
Yeah, I'll do my best at some point. One question before we get stuck into all of this business type things. You recently married?
I am indeed, yes.
Okay. So the big question is, does your wife know that your girlfriend's here?
So that's, first of all, that's not true.
Oh, right, okay.
Secondly, that's one of the reasons why I don't invite my wife to these events. And thirdly, I'd like to say I've been happily married for a good 9 months now, and I intend on being so for the next 60 years.
So how's technology impacted that standardization in your life?
That's interesting. I got a request over the weekend to change my Facebook status to married, which I've not yet done, but I will do as soon as I arrive back home. So technology has actually made it easier because we both adapt to, I work abroad a lot, and we both adapt to using things like Skype, so we can see each other and talk to one another, social networking, cheaper calls through Viber and such like. So I think technology for us, both being global travelers with global roles, has helped my marriage, although I'm not sure of the relevance of this question.
I'll get there, I promise. The key for me is that piece of technology, we often talk as an industry about accounts payable, optimization, and all of those wonderful tools that sit there. But what about other technologies? In your 33 things that you've done over the last 13 years, how many times have you implemented other technologies, such as the Facebook type stuff, and what was the value, and why would I do it as a CFO, as a shared services leader?
So I think more so over the last few years. Actually, I think technology is playing more and more a part of what's happening in shared services and outsourcing. Given that there's more and more opportunities available through the use of things like software as a service tools. There's numerous providers that are in the exhibition room with great tools that you can use as add-ons to improve the effectiveness and the efficiency of your processes. And 5-10 years ago, there just weren't as many, and the solution was a big ERP to try and do some of the nifty, smaller efficiencies that you were looking for.
So what you're saying is the ERP suppliers are failing?
Failing is an interesting term. So I think the ERP providers are succeeding in providing a global template across an organization. But when an organization, when you have to ask yourself whether you adopt one global template across your whole organization from a technology standpoint. And if you aim to drive standardization, for example, through technology, then that's going to fail. And the reason for that is because standardization is not driven through osmosis.
Okay. So of the 33 deals you've been involved with, how many of them have involved that element of standardization beyond the ERP? And which ones would you go back to the supplier and then say, okay, you could do these 3 things better, and what would those be?
So numerous of them haven't involved, well, when you say going beyond the ERP, what we've done is looked at add-on tools for every single area of the particular function. So let's take finance as an example. I'm not going to talk about AP because everyone knows about AP, but you can look at reconciliation matching tools. You can look at AR matching tools. You can go through the whole cycle. One of the things we're working on now with a particular client, one of the largest restaurant owners, is a completely automated finance function. So it really changes the dynamic from, let's lift and shift, or let's transform and shift, to let's automate completely.
Okay. Well, one of the challenges I've come up against in my life is that when you've lifted and shifted, you then get to a position where you say, how do I get a business case? Because I know the suppliers will tell me, go get value, and you've got to be able to sell value to your board and all that sort of stuff. But from your point of view, how do you actually build a business case when you've already got the lift and shift done, the stabilization's in place, you've got the outsourcing deal or the shared services deal, and you want to make a change to the technology? How do you get that business case together?
Actually, I disagree that it's more complicated to do it in a shared services environment. I would say it's easier. Because if you're trying to justify the investment on a new technology in 20 decentralized units, then you're literally going to each unit at a time and saying, I'm going to invest X, it's not going to pay back as much. When you've got a shared service center environment, actually, you've got this centralized capability. I shouldn't do that. You have this centralized capability, and hence your business case impacts a larger number of people. And if people are your biggest saving, then the justification for the investment is easier, actually, within a shared service center environment.
But if I've put it offshore, or I've put it into one of the cheaper Eastern European locations, and I've now got people who cost me pretty close to nothing, you've got to get rid of a heck of a lot of them to actually make that investment plausible. And I've been in situations where I've walked into my CFOs and said to the CFO, I want to do this, and he goes, names and social security numbers.
Right.
So if you do that in an offshore environment, in a Bulgaria environment as an example, you've got to get rid of 35 people, whereas pre-transition you would have got rid of 10 or 5.
Yeah, and that's very true. And sometimes I think in those type of environments, you have to take a different view. So instead of looking for the tweaks, so maybe a small technology system that saves you 10 to 15%, maybe you should look at your whole process. Maybe you should just look at P2P and say, what should my P2P look like at the top level, not through 200 process maps, but through one process map. And why the hell is it so complicated in my organization? So what's wrong? And normally it's around behaviors of people. It's around the lack of compliance. Technology can enable that. But the broader issues need to be resolved to really get the savings. So I always say when we talk about standardization is not driven by technology. Standardization is driven by great people, underpinned by processes, enabled by technology.
So get the process right, get the people right, put the right technology in, life's easy.
Yeah, or the opposite way around. Get the people right, get the process right, put the technology in, and life is still very complicated, but your business outcomes are more achievable.
Okay. Can you give me one example where that's worked with the people you've worked with in that 33? In that order.
In that order. Well, that's a great question. And the best example I'll give is we're doing some work with Diageo at the moment, and they started at the people. They've got great people in place, great leaders in place, a great vision in place, then moved on to a global process model, built a global process model that should operate across every single geographic region, including emerging markets, and now looking at the right technology to underpin that to be able to deliver greater value through their shared services and outsourcing operations.
So do you have a model? Because when you talk about the Diageos of this world and the really big global business service organizations, it's one thing. But most of the people in this room are probably not in that place. They're in the much smaller business service organizations, the shared service organizations. And have you got something? Have you got some way, some techniques that would help the people develop the people piece, this process piece, and then put the technology on top? How do you do it?
Yeah, there's no. I'm afraid to say there's no easy answer. I would suggest, and I know I've mentioned it this morning as well, starting off with a vision, because what you want to do is inspire your people. Again, coming back to some of the sessions we've seen around the Olympics, what you want to do is make your people love to come to work for that company. Inspire your people, start at that end, become a best place to work, and then work on the processes, and then work on the technology. And what you'll find is the people drive everything. Generally, a lot of the issues that we have in shared services and outsourcing are driven by bad behaviors. And that's the root cause of a lot of the problems that I get involved in is due to poor behaviors, it's due to poor management, it's due to different styles not necessarily meshing well, it's due to a lack of understanding of culture and adapting to different cultures. And these are some of the things that you can fix through having great people from the start.
So the technology piece in terms of standardization.
Finish that thought.
Okay. The technology piece in terms of standardization, how does that play back into the vision? And because I've seen people try to use technology as the catalyst for change.
And whilst every scenario is different, but on the whole, I think organizations have tried that for ERPs, using it as a real catalyst for change. And whilst it gives them the capability to then drive further change, it doesn't give them the standard model across every single area of the business. And the reason is, a common ERP solution is more often than not implemented in an uncommon way.
Okay. No.
And I can offer marriage counseling as well, John.
Good point to end there. Thank you very much, Rakesh and John. Question from the front, please.
Interesting that Rakesh says something completely opposite to people like Denny, who actually says 80% of reasons for not meeting customer expectations is because of the process and not the people. Therefore, most people don't want to come to work and do a bad job. It's the processes that prevent them from doing so. I think you contradicted that, didn't you?
So my response to that with who creates the processes? It's the people, right? If you have people that are delivering a service for which the customer is dissatisfied and the people have done nothing about it, you have to ask yourself, why have the people not acted? Have you got the right environment for them to change the environment such that they're delivering good service? Or it's because they've never really understood that they've delivered bad service. So then you have to underpin that with the right process behind the good people to make sure that they understand those messages. John?
Well, I think you have to be careful with the words bad service. I think what you're doing in a lot of business is developing. So it's change. It's not necessarily always better. It's just more standard sometimes.
And I think that's a great point as well. So customer satisfaction, we talk about service, but what is a satisfied customer in terms of what we do? If I've got an expense processing team, I don't want all of the employees scoring top rating of 5. They're really happy with that process. Because that potentially means that they always get paid really quickly and everything gets through the expense process. So actually, and we have to be really careful when we do things like customer satisfaction surveys, because I would argue that meets expectations is probably our aim in terms of what we're delivering in some of our shared service centers, rather than really looking to exceed expectations when you're doing things that the rest of the business may see as transactional.
Okay. So one of the messages is don't do expenses in your company.
No. One of the messages is be careful on how you measure customer satisfaction when doing expenses in your company.
Yes, please, from the middle.
Hello. Sorry.
Hello.
Can I? Piotr Biniewicz, Procter & Gamble. I have a question in terms of standardization in technology, how the business perceives that. Very often the global standardization technology like SAP is perceived by the business as a limitation for agility change. Do you see in the next couple of years some key breakthrough in the technology which really proves that we are agile and change? And the second part of the question is, do you have any tactics how to measure the speed and prove to the business that we are still agile and open for change? Thank you.
Right. I think it's a great question. And whilst I think the big ERP providers and the capabilities bring a lot to the table, I think it's true to be said that it doesn't fit every single organization. Now, that said, you get a lot of medium-sized organizations that invest heavily in big ERP softwares that don't necessarily provide them with the business case that they were looking for. I think that's very dangerous. You know, we try and recommend our customers to look at fit for purpose. And fit for purpose can be, at some instances, finding the right tools to give you the right business outcomes, the right efficiencies in the different areas of scope. So I think the market is changing because we see more and more organizations who have implemented, let's say, an ERP and don't want to pay for the additional add-on to the ERP and are looking on, you know, some of these software as a service tools to provide that additional capability, to provide that additional efficiency.
Yeah, for me, I think you actually see the change if you come to this thing 5 years ago and compare it to today. The amount of vendors out there that are selling a piece of software to go on top of these things is incredible. The choice now is really, really tough because they're good products. One of the things I would say is you have to be very careful because the people, you don't want to invest in something, get a very short payback, and your internal client end up doing all the work. Because the worst thing in the world for me is we do these lift and shift exercises, we take work away from people, and then we give somebody else the work back. And those people are probably more expensive than the people we took it away from in the first place. So when you look at the total cost of process, I'd be really careful with that bit.
Fine. If I could summarize, I think what we're hearing is be agile but be careful.
Yeah.
Rakesh, John, thanks very much.
Thank you.